The Knight. The Knight, the Knight, the Knight. If you haven't seen my Roaring Delta series, I would highly encourage watching that before this one. This builds off the idea, as I set up in that series, that the dark side of the chessboard is composed of 5 conspirators who only partially know the plan of the mastermind. Chris the Rook, Des the Knight, Alvin the Bishop, Asgore the King, and the mastermind, Carol the Queen, with Gaster being the hand controlling every single piece. Now, the Knight is certainly the conspirator I needed to go into more detail about. And I am going to put a lot of focus on the secret bosses of Chapter 3, but I am going to talk more about details on what the Knight even is. Now, I do believe the Knight is a Darkner, and that might be controversial to some. First of all, the Knight is way more amorphic than the other Lightners are in the Dark World, shapeshifting and stuff. They're made of pure shadow and move about the world as if it was their domain. I've discussed that this Knight's will to forge the Neo-Dark Fountain doesn't necessarily have to be a trait exclusive to Lightners. Rather, it's just akin to how much will, how much determination they have. The Knight is our strongest opponent so far, the boss being an even more brutal fight than the Titan one at the end of Chapter 4. If any Darkner can forge a Dark Fountain, it would be the Knight. But this leaves a question. How can the Knight form fountains in the Dark World, and what item are there in the Light World? Simple. The Black Knight is the Black Knife. The Black Knife which pulls the fountains from the earth. A knife covered in the dust of Death's Deltarune. When the fountain is formed, the knife is shifted, and the knife becomes the Knight. Darkners turn themselves into weapons all the time. Jevil turns himself into a knife, funniest shit I've seen. The Knight can do the same. Therefore, when the Dark Mother forges her Dark Worlds, her daughter is there too. This is why King trusted the Knight, but how he was also able to create the library Dark World. The Knight was not a Lightner lying about its identity. It was a Darkner used by a Lightner to bring the Dark World into existence. Perhaps this is the same knife Chris carries around. But how? Doesn't Chris hold this the whole time? Not necessarily. In Chapter 2, we brought Lancer and Rules card to the library Dark World, and Rules was able to sneak out easily without us knowing. So, who's to say the Knight can't easily sneak in and out of Chris's pockets without us knowing? Whenever we close our eyes to think about Susie, or whenever the camera moves away to show something else, whenever the screen goes dark and our vision is blurred, anytime this happens, the Knight could slip in and out of Chris's pockets. However, this could also be a different knife. This could be the knife that Carol uses, like the katana. Maybe, maybe not. So this leads us to what I really wanted to talk about, ERAM. ERAM is very overlooked, as the Knight is technically the secret boss, because he's the one who gives us the Shadow Crystal, and it is the difficult challenge of the route. However, ERAM is an important part of this fight, the one who gives us the Shadow Mantle to make it easier. Then who is ERAM? Well, from ERAM's dialogue, it makes it very weird if we're not going to meet this little guy again. He knows a lot about Chris, and we don't get much character development outside the bunker. If he was just some little chaotic guy with no connection to Gaster, no connection to the Knight, that'd be weird, right? He knows about the knife. Without play, the knife grows dull. Her knife, the knife she is. Interesting. Tenna and Lancer have in-game representations. Why can't the Knight have one as well? Look at ERAM's design. 2 big horns, a single mouth which doubles as an eye, and the rest of her body is shrouded in a cloak. Obviously, Toby isn't going to make it too obvious. He isn't going to make the antler shape the exact same. And this would be interesting, because the 2 parts of the secret boss route are the same boss. Now's your chance to be a mini-boss and secret big shot boss. ERAM mini boss, and night secret boss. Now, admittedly, fire magic versus ice magic is weird. The entire holiday family is associated with ice magic, but ERAM's element is fire. I wouldn't overthink that. This is just an in-game version. It could just be meant to contrast with the ice, but it also could allude to the hell imagery associated with the night and the roaring. If Noel is a parallel to Jesus, then the night is probably a parallel to the Antichrist. So if ERAM is the night, why would she give us the Shadow Mantle? Simple. For play. For fun. ERAM's philosophy seems to be the fun of battle, the fun in a scuffle, burning red flames and something like that of a fire. The knight wanted a challenge, but knew they would win. So, some further evidence. ERAM seems to speak to Chris like a co-conspirator. That was fun, but we both have work to do. As if Chris knows what the fuck ERAM is talking about. This presents a very dark realization. Des loved Noel, and Chris, and Asriel. She cared about them so dearly, she wouldn't take Chris's jokes about ice-themed cryptids lurking in the forest when they made Noel scared. But ERAM's dialogue about using up Chris and using up Noel, being at least intrigued by the Snowgrave route they forced Chris to play through in the game. If the knight is Des, ERAM can't also be Des, can she? Well, Flowey wasn't that similar to Asriel, was he? Asriel, the kindly goat boy, taking Shara into Mom and Dad's house. He became a completely different person after his death, crying in the garden because no one would come to help him, then living eternally in a state where he went back to the garden every time he died, but also couldn't get back to the life he once had. It completely broke him. He lost all love, but gained LV. When Flowey took 6 souls, he donned the appearance of a demon, the 7-headed beast whose number was 6. It was when he was near the power of 7 human souls, just shy of what Asgore wanted to become, that he donned the appearance of an angel. An angel that still had devil horns, still held on to some of that demonic personality, but slowly yet surely began to regain his emotions and feeling and personality. And spending years in a deep, dark realm, only being brought back by her mother's crazy scheme. Perhaps Des has lost her ability to feel love. Carol wants her baby girl back, but Des has become a being that only craves the desire to play, to have fun, to have freedom. The freedom to dance, to sing, to strike, to kill, to sin. If ERAM returns in any sense, the only sense I could see it as is the night. Because that was what the night... Because what was the night doing while we were playing games with Tenna? Anything, really. But the knight could have had a desire to play with Chris. The fact is, people find ERAM kind of boring as a one-off character, but as an insight to the personality of a character who doesn't speak, ERAM becomes so much more interesting. So Des is not only lost in the sense of location, but also in the sense of morality. The fallen angel, the harbinger of darkness. Des, the roaring knight. Who's the fucking knight? You know that it is Desi. She stabs the fucking carpet and she makes it puke confetti.